Welcome to another episode of Toya Talks Wrestling, and we are going to continue on with part 2 of the Mr. McMahon documentary series on Netflix. Today we're going to be talking about episodes 3 and 4. So let's go on ahead and get into it because there is a lot to talk about in episode 3. The name of the episode is called Screwjob. So in the beginning of the episode when they first started, there is a clip of Wendy Wishart or something like that. At the time was the women's champion, and Vince was like, hey, you need to give up this title and give it to somebody else, and she didn't want to, or something like that. And Vince was like, well, we're going to make you give up the title. He didn't say that to her, but that's what he said on the show. And they show a clip of, her getting pinned, but clearly kicking out at one. And then the referee just counts anyway. And then the other opponent, who happened to be masked, but she took off her mask, happened to be Fabulous Moolah, had won the title. Now, side note, had nothing to do with this right now, but side note, I have heard a lot of bad shit about Fabulous Moolah. I don't know if it's true or not, but I've heard a lot of bad things, and I remember hearing about this certain story between these two, not from obviously from Vince's side, but from other women as well as Wendy herself. So who knows? But at the end, let's go back to the story. So basically, I guess you could say this was the first screw job that Vince did. And Vince is like, it's nothing personal, but I needed to get the title off of you and you didn't want to drop it. So, and I think it was kind of just effed up, but at the same time, I guess I could understand the concept of that. Maybe. But anyways, that's how it starts, and then you see a screenshot and it says Mr. McMahon, and then we pick up where we left off at episode 2. So in episode 2, where Hulk Hogan was about to do his testimony or his to the court for about Vince McMahon distributing steroids to his talent. And I guess a lot of people thought that Hulk Hogan was going to say that he did it, but Hulk Hogan ended up saying that, well, no, Vince McMahon didn't sell steroids, or he didn't even tell his talent, the wrestlers, to take steroids. He didn't say no, don't take it. He didn't also say, but he also didn't say, yeah, take it. So it's kind of like, well, he's not really guilty of anything, because technically he wasn't guilty of anything, because it's like he wasn't disputing, he wasn't giving these drugs out, and he wasn't telling them to do the drugs, but at the same time he wasn't it's kind of like you tell your friends I wouldn't do it, but I'm not stopping you from doing it. It's like, you want to do it, go ahead and do it, but I'm telling you, I'm not contributing to your habit, in other words. So obviously Vince McMahon got off on that charge, and he was considered innocent. A lot of people were unhappy. I don't know why. And even afterwards, even some of the wrestlers, I was taking steroids even before Vince got into the business. Because like I said before in my last video, steroids were legal at one point in time. It was okay to take steroids. It was not that big of a deal. A lot of people in sports took steroids. Just, it didn't become big of a deal until, it was considered one of the top 3 worst drugs, I guess, back then. That happened in this episode where they talked about replacing Hulk Hogan with Lex Luger, because they needed someone to just be that American hero, I guess. And so they talks about Lex Luger. Les Luger didn't really work out as well. He ended up actually going to WCW later on, but it didn't work out well. You know, I like Lex Luger, but he could never take the place of Hulk Hogan. It just didn't happen. It couldn't happen. They also introduced like some new stars where we had like Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, things like that. They are just coming into the fold. They had like new talent, I guess, to replace these old talents from like back in the 80s. It was like early 90s and stuff like that. So they introduced these talents. Also during this time, there was a lot of Ted Turner, who owned TNT. TNT was WC was on TNT, so basically, I guess you could say he owned WCW. He was taking a lot of WWE's talents because at this time, like during this time, WCW was pretty much dominating in ratings, and WWE, because of the whole steroid thing and everything else, their ratings weren't that good. A lot of people weren't really watching, and a lot of people were like, "Hey, let's just, this Ted Turner could offer more money to talent, over to the what do you call it, to WCW. From Ted Turner can hire like the talent from WWE and give them more money, and who don't want more money, right? So a lot of WWE stars would go over to WCW because they were making the money. Makes sense. Another thing that was talked about on this episode was how WCW went to Monday Night Raw. Ted Turner went up to Eric Bischoff and it's like, how do we win against basically Vince McMahon and WWE, I guess F at the time? How do we beat them? And Eric Bischoff was like, well, Raw is on prime time, right? From like 9 to 11. It's a prime time show. We're only on like on Saturdays and like in the afternoon or something like that. Ted Turner's like, okay, well, let's make a 2-hour from 8 to 10 on Monday night. WCW will have Nitro on. So once that happened, we had what we call back in the 90s the Monday Night War, where you had WCW versus WWE. And I'm pretty sure a lot of us, because I know I did, when WCW, as hot as it was, because it was pretty hot back then, you would watch WCW, and then I would watch WCW, and then at 10 o'clock I would move it over to Raw, and I would watch the last hour of Raw. That's what I did. Because, I mean, I still watch Raw, right? It was still a good show to me. It was just, WCW was just a better show. Like, WWE back then was like a calm show. WCW was like, oh man, look at all this fucking cool ass shit over here is going on. You know what I mean? This is like adult shit. This is like, man, this is like shit I ain't supposed to be watching right now. That's how I feel. So there was the start of the Monday Night Wars. I believe that Eric Bischoff was just trying to like get under and get at Vince McMahon during this time as well. Like Vince McMahon was trying to like deal with Ted Turner. Cause I remember that time where Vince McMahon was like, oh yeah, Ted this, Ted that, Ted this, Ted that. And Eric Bishop was like, but what about me? I'm the one who's doing this, not Ted Turner. Ted Turner just owns the network. I'm doing this, I'm doing everything. So, like, calm down, Mr. Bischoff. There was also, talking about the Clique and how the Clique broke kayfabe. So, as you know, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall were going to go over to WCW, and they had that one match where it was Kevin, Scott, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels, they had their match. And after their match, there was that one scene where they just hugged each other. Now, from what the documentary was saying, that I don't know if it was Shawn, I can't remember if it was Shawn Michaels or Triple H, but Triple H was, one of them was like, hey, these other two guys are leaving, we should do something big, right? We should just send them off well or whatever. And Vince McMahon like agreed. He's like, yeah, sure. And I don't know what Vince McMahon thought they were going to do. I don't even know if the Clique knew what they thought they would do. But at the time, they broke kayfabe because these were these were four guys who were supposed to be like two guys and the other two guys, and they're supposed to all hate each other, whatever. But they hugged in the ring and everything else, and they broke kayfabe, and you can't do that back then, right? It was a bad thing, right? You don't break kayfabe. You have to be like, okay, if you're a heel, only heels hang out with the heels. The heels don't hang out with the baby faces. That's wrong. So now that they broke this kayfabe thing, it's like Vince McMahon is like, I don't know. Now he's like, well, now someone has to pay, and at the time, Shawn Michaels was the champion. Kevin Nash and Scott Hall were gone, so Triple H was the one who got punished. And he got punished by, they took away his shot for King of the Ring and gave it to Stone Cold Steve Austin instead. Which, I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But yeah, that's what happens, right? And it's like, in Triple H was telling like Vince McMahon, it's like, I understand why you're doing this, but maybe we're at the era in our ways where people are like, maybe they know that this is just like acting and it's just like a show, whatever, and maybe we should change with the times. And Vince is like, yeah, someday, but not today. And I can understand, because a lot of people, like even The Undertaker was like, he said that he was kind of like upset and mad about the situation because it's like, Undertaker is very professional. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's very professional. Undertaker was always on. Whenever he's in public, he was always on. He was always the Undertaker. It's like, yes, we know that you're really like, Mark, but he was always Undertaker. Whenever he's in public, he was an Undertaker. You know what I mean? And I get it. And I understand. But it's like now. And I'll go back to the story in a minute. It's like now, right? People are like, oh, like, they talking about the White Six. The White Six should be taking pictures out of costume and everything else and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, we already know that it's just a show. That these are not freaking real people. But I guess back then, we were considered that they were real people. I don't know. I guess maybe back then that might have made me upset, maybe a little bit. But it's like, the things that I've seen, I'm just like, come on. I don't know. But yeah, Triple H got punished. He got his thing taken away. He also was in this other crazy matches and everything else. So he was the one who was punished. So for 83 consecutive weeks, WCW dominated WWE and the ratings. They couldn't be touched. Have you noticed that Eric Bischoff has like a podcast, I think a YouTube channel called 83 Weeks? Well, that's why. For 83 weeks, he was like, Eric Bischoff was the man. He was the man, right? He was the one that was like, yeah, I am the one that has beaten Vince McMahon, the person who people say that cannot be beat. I'm beating him for 83 weeks, which 83 weeks is a long ass fucking time. And I can see it too, because the show was just so good. It was good for those 83 weeks. But it's like, I feel like Eric Bishop sometimes gets cocky and shit happens. So, but for those 83 weeks, he was doing well, and WWE was not. So also during this time, I think Vince McMahon was worried that he was going to lose Bret the Hitman Hart. Bret the Hitman Hart was pretty much a big deal. He didn't have like the charisma like most of the other talent that had left, but he wanted to make sure that he didn't go anywhere. So he had like a contract for Bret Hart, but initially had to break that contract because he couldn't afford to pay Bret Hart the money that I guess Bret Hart wanted or deserved, I guess, and had to say, hey, I can't pay you. If you want to leave, we can dry up the contract, and that's fine. You can go and leave. So Bret Hart went where the money was going, obviously. So he wanted to go to WCW. It looked like everything was going to be like there was no, what do you call it? Like, shit, what's the word I'm looking for? Like everything was like in the up and up. Like no one was like, there's no bad blood here, no big deal. You want to go with the money, I understand, kind of thing. Go ahead and leave, but you can have one more match. Now at the time, Bret Hart was the champion. He was a WWF champion at the time. I want to apologize if you can hear a leaf blower, but I think it's like the gardeners are here. Anyways, let me continue. So Bret Hart was champion, and Vince McMahon was like, hey, I'm going to need you to drop the title. And which wouldn't be no big deal, right? Because you're leaving WWE to go WCW. You do not need to take the title with you because that title technically don't really belong to you, belongs to WWE. And so it's like, but I want you to drop the title off to HBK. And I guess Bret Hart and HBK did not like each other. Bret Hart thought that Shawn Michaels was just a prick, a jerk, an asshole, and didn't like him and didn't want to drop the title off to Shawn Michaels. And Shawn Michaels wasn't really fond of, Bret Hart. Look, I can understand that like people in the business don't like each other. But if the boss of the company says, hey, you need to drop this title off at this person, I think you should drop the title off at the person, regardless of how you feel about that person. It's like, who cares? That is your you problem. You figure that out. Just because you don't like this person doesn't mean that you get to pick and choose who you get to like drop the title off to. Bret Hart didn't want to do it. You can imagine what I'm about to talk about next. Introducing the Montreal Screwjob. Now, I'm not going into the Montreal Screwjob. If you don't know about the Montreal Screwjob by now, I don't know. You're either like a new wrestler or you've been sleeping under a rock. People who watch wrestling knows about the Screwjob. They know about it very, very, very well. And if you don't, go look it up. It's all over YouTube. It's very simple. Go look it up. But that's what happened. Vince McMahon took the initiative and said, well, if Bret Hart doesn't want to drop the title off to Shawn Michaels, well, we'll make him get the title off him. And basically had Shawn Michaels put Bret Hart into a sharpshooter, which was Bret Hart's move, and then Vince McMahon told them to ring the bell. At first they didn't do it. They didn't ring the bell. And then Vince McMahon cussed at the guy and said, ring the bell. And so they ring the bell. Bret Hart obviously didn't tap. He just lost the title. It became like this big controversy in the wrestling world. The Bret Hart was like signing WCW in the air with his hands, like in like making the letters and just like kind of like he was writing in the air, and he was just pissed off, which understandable. I can understand why you would be pissed the fuck off, but at the same time, can you really blame Vince? Like seriously? Like I know there's two sides to every story, and I've heard both sides, and I'm just like I can understand where Bret Hart's coming from, but it's like you did not want to drop the title because you did not like a person. Like I don't like this person, so I'm not dropping the title to them. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna do what I have to do. Don't take it personally. But at the same time, it's just like I can understand where this is coming from. It's like, hey, I'm letting you off this contract because I can't pay you, granted, but at least you can do is drop the title off. Now, I'm sure that the reason why Vince picked Shawn Michaels and didn't pick somebody else was because, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels had like some real feud or some real beef. Because if one thing that is Vince McMahon is that he will take a real storyline and then make it into the show. If somebody had like a problem with somebody else, it's like, oh, okay, well, let's put that in the ring. Let's put it in the ring. Let's make it look good. And McMahon did. Whether it's a good thing, whether it's a bad thing, I don't know, whatever. Hey, but if it makes money, right? If it makes money, that's all that matters. But eventually, Bret Hart spit in Vince McMahon's eye, and it was this bunch of, he went on a rage. He started breaking everything and all this other stuff. It's like again, I can understand it. I understand where you're coming from, Mr. Hart. I really do. Eventually, Owen Hart had to pretty much calm down, like his brother Bret Hart, as much as possible. They ended up going backstage, and a lot of people were talking. They asked Triple H, "Did you know about this?" Triple H says no. They asked Shawn Michaels, "Do you know about this?" They say no. They were both lying, obviously. They both knew. But, Vince McMahon was like, don't say any goddamn thing to anybody. If they ask you, just say no. You know nothing. Nothing at all. Was that a right decision? I don't know. Are they going to get payback for what they did? I don't know. But for the most part, they just denied it. Okay, cool. So there's a little bit of thing here where it's just like Bret Hart ends up punching Vince McMahon. Now Vince McMahon said that he went to go look for Bret Hart to go get his lickings because he knew Bret Hart was gonna be pissed and everything. Now, so I'm gonna give Bret Hart a free shot at my face or whatever. I'm gonna have him punch me. And Bret Hart was like, that's not what happened. Bret Hart was like, we basically were like kind of like wrestling each other, and I got in a good uppercut on him. So I don't know which one is which because there were people there, but it was like they didn't know what happened, right? I guess they must have started to fighting and they didn't know how that Bret Hart got that hit in. He got his hit in, he got his licks in. So I guess he got his revenge and stuff on that, but that was that. So the episode ends with basically a bunch of clips of Mr. McMahon becoming heel. You have all these heel personas, pictures and clips and stuff like that. So this right here was kind of like, is this the heel turn that started the character Mr. McMahon? Because apparently Vince McMahon and Mr. McMahon are two different people. Vince McMahon is the guy, the nice guy, and Mr. McMahon is the heel character, I guess. But yeah, episode 3, Screwjob. The beginning of the Mr. McMahon heel character ? Oh no, I don't know. But let's go on ahead and talk about episode 4. Episode 4 was titled Attitude. So in the beginning of episode 4, Vince McMahon is talking about one of his favorite wrestlers. The wrestler he liked was a guy named Dr. Jerry Grand. Dr. Jerry Grand was, I guess, a heel. Because Vince McMahon said that he always liked the bad guys in the wrestling. And he pretty much, I guess you could say, Mr. McMahon, Vince McMahon made the character Mr. McMahon more like the character of Dr. Jerry Grand. He was like a heel, he did the strut, he didn't really walk, he strut, he had like this big old persona, he was just flamboyant and everything else, and he was amazing according to Vince McMahon. So Mr. McMahon was pretty much the image of this Dr. Jerry Grand. So in the episode, they're still talking about WCW still beating WWE and everything else during this time. It wasn't until I guess one day Vince McMahon was not at one of the shows on, I guess it was Raw, and Shawn Michaels comes out with some biker shorts and his pants stuffed with, he said it was gauze, like, you know, like medical gauze. He just put the thing and he starts gyrating all over everywhere with his music and stuff like that. And this was kind of like, what are you fucking doing? Like, this is a family show. Stop gyrating your pelvis everywhere, right? He ended up, Vince McMahon was like, I'm gonna have to fine you for that, like $10,000. And Shawn Michaels was like, yeah, okay, cool, but go back and look at it. It's pretty funny. People were laughing. And he pretty much just dodged a $10,000 fine because Vince was like, yeah, that was pretty funny. It was pretty funny. I think this is where we enter the what is known as the Attitude Era. So in the Attitude Era, we got to get to know some interesting characters and people and factions. One of them being DX, better known as D-Generation X. D-Generation X was pretty much this raunchy, sexual, this bad, just gritty faction. Eric Bischoff was like, I think D-Generation X was just a callback for NWO. Basically the same thing. Like, NWO was like older guys who were like acting like badasses and just being this destructive, whereas D-Generation X was younger guys being destructive. But I think, you know, I don't know which one did I like better. I think I like DX better than I liked NWO. I think DX was just some of the things that they were doing. I was just like, wow. They were on USA, and I don't think USA kind of approved of some of the things that were done. But like the next week, people were like, oh, look, degeneration signs, and look, degeneration this, and things like that. And it's like, oh, okay, you know, maybe we should keep this. Maybe we're going somewhere with this. It's like, it's bringing money. And if there's one thing that I have realized, that it doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's bringing money, nobody really gives a shit. So, One of the biggest stars they talked about in the WWE Attitude Era was Stone Cold Steve Austin. Stone Cold Steve Austin was a beer drinking, like, low IQ Texas, some son of a bitch or whatever, that people just love. They can recognize and they can just connect with this person and everything else. Also, like, Stone Cold Steve Austin got to fight Vince McMahon, who was like his boss, and like at the time, who wouldn't want to like fight their boss sometimes? Like, oh man, he's getting on my nerves, man. I would just love to put him in a chokehold, It's like, So it's like I think like people live vicariously through Stone Cold Steve Austin when he was able to just beat the crap out of Vince McMahon on a whim, because he was like, hey, I know he's my boss, but he's a little bit of a jerk and he needs to be stunned. You know what I'm saying? You remember earlier in the episode of 3 when I told you that Triple H got his King of the Ring taken away. Well, they gave it to Steve Austin. Steve Austin became King of the Ring, and he was talking about like religion and Bibles and stuff like that. This is where Austin 360 came from, and the line at the end where also came like when he finished up the promo after like winning. He finished up his promo and said the famous line, because Stone Cold said so, and that pretty much right there was it. Everybody was saying that quote. I remember that fucking fondly. Everywhere we freaking go to, they said, because I said so, because this person, they would say it all the time. It was like, okay, I get it, got it, you watch wrestling, understandable. It's like, but that was the thing, right? The Stone Cold Steve Austin, and then you had Stone Cold Steve Austin, and the Vince McMahon battles were just amazing. It was funny, and everything else. It was everything like you could even want to, and it was like kind of like you could. I mean, obviously the tides were turning. Now the audience was getting a little bit more older. We ain't dealing with like 12-year-olds anymore. We're dealing with like older people now. It was getting like a rise and everything else. Also, Vince McMahon created the character Mr. McMahon. Mr. McMahon, according to Vince, was the kind of guy that, was rich and pretty much can do whatever he felt like he wanted to do because he was rich. He was going to stop him. Side note, Mr. McMahon and Vince McMahon, they're the same fucking person. Okay, anyways. So yeah, so Mr. McMahon was just basically this rich ass asshole. I was like, I'm gonna do whatever I want. There's not a damn thing that anybody can do about it. I'm the boss. I'm in charge. I can fire you guys anytime I want to, kind of guy. I think that Hill McMahon is a great character. I think the problem with Hill McMahon was he became too damn real, in my opinion. But that's neither here or there, and that's just a personal opinion. I'll go ahead and continue on with my fucking my shit. And this time we got to be introduced to The Rock. Rocky Maivia, was that his name? Right? They didn't really like Rocky Maivia because it was like, oh, another third generation kid that no one gives a shit about. He got this fucking opportunity because of his uncle, because of his grandpa and his dad. Who freaking cares? Right? Who cares? The Rock eventually went to the Nation of Domination. Or the Nation Domination. Anyway, it doesn't matter. He went there and he became a heel and became pretty popular as a heel. Eventually, saying that he became popular as a heel. And as time goes on, obviously, The Rock became more and more popular because he was not only good in the ring, but he was also good on the mic. So, there's that, and that was a thing. And they also talked about how The Rock became champion, and I guess the first person of color to become champion. This is when people were like, I heard a lot about how Vince McMahon was racist. And there was a lot of people that said this, right? And in the documentary, they had The Rock, and they had some other, I think, what was it? I think it's Junkyard Dog. I think that's who it was, who's black, saying that, nah, Vince McMahon didn't give a shit about race. He should give a shit about money. You know what I'm saying? If you're bringing him money, if you were bringing Vince McMahon some money, he wouldn't care if you were green, yellow, orange, black, white, doesn't matter. He would make you champion because he knows that you're going to be bringing the money. The only color he fucking cared about was green. You know, so I don't know how true this is, but I mean, I'm saying that The Rock said this, and another guy says this, and they're both of color. I'm just gonna assume that they know better than I do. Another thing they talked about in episode 4, they talked about the exploitation of the women in the WWE during the Attitude Era. Now, let me just say this. If me today could go back and talk to Toya, who was watching the Attitude Era back then, I'd probably tell her not to watch it. Because the things that they would have done to these women, they weren't, women in the WWE weren't wrestlers. They were just eye candy. Sex objects. There was like, hey guys, here's something for you to jerk off to for like a couple of minutes or something like that. You know, they pussy all of these. They treated women like really badly. Like, they're terrible. I mean, they would call them like all kinds of names. I don't even think names I can't even repeat. I might lose my freaking channel if I do, so I'm not going to. But at the time, I laughed it off. I thought it was just funny. I was like, yeah, she is one of those things. Look at her, ha 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 ha. I mean, they had like broad panties matches. They had like Sable with the freaking handprints on the boobs. Like, come on, dude. Like, no way. There is no way that this could happen today. Especially in WWE. Maybe AEW, I don't know. But like WWE, there's no way. I cannot see it. Like, the most risque thing is like Liv in her short shorts and everything else. It's like, sheesh. I mean, it was like the things that they did back then to the women. I'm just like, wow. Just wow. But like, here's the thing, right? I have been watching wrestling like pretty much since I was a kid. I can be honest with you, I didn't start loving wrestling to the Attitude Era. Some of the things that these women went through and everything else, it was just, I mean, now I just feel bad. Like back then, I was all aboard. I was like, yeah, whatever. You know, these women deserve it. They are what they say these are and everything else. But like nowadays, I'm just like, sheesh. It's like. But like then it worked back then because see, you had like shows like Jerry Springer where they had like women flashing, and you had like Howard Stern, and you had like other freaking shows and pop culture, and like WWE is always going for like what is going on around the world. That is how they get their storylines and their stories from. What's happening? What is hot right now? What is hot on the market right now? Oh, that's hot on the market right now. Okay, let's see if we can make it into a storyline so that can so they can connect with other people. So they'll be like, oh yeah, I can see that being a thing. Yeah, okay, yeah, I get it. You know, it's like it's all about pop culture and everything else. So, you know, being raunchy and treating women like whatever was a thing. Probably not a proud moment thing. I'm pretty sure none of these, like, especially like the WWE stars, I'm talking about, it wasn't a proud moment thing. I'm not proud of it. If I could take it back, I would. I mean, like, but then, like, I think Triple H said the best, because I don't know if it's wrong for me to do it or if it's wrong for people to enjoy it. I'm just like, you know what? It was what it was. That's what I'm saying. I don't think it was wrong, but I don't think it was right. It was somewhere like in the middle. It was a very gray area, I guess you could say. Another thing, they talked about the death of Owen Hart. So, for those of you who don't know, Owen Hart died. He fell from the rafters of after trying to like fly into the ring. I think he was some kind of another character that he was playing, and he was in the harness, and the harness was basically defected and fell out onto the ring and was dead. Now, and then he died. To his death, he got splat. As they said splat. I didn't say splat. This is what they said on the documentary. He got splat on on the ring. There was, I guess, a controversy of this was, should Vince McMahon had continued the show or stopped the show. He ended up the show continued, right? Because apparently he was like, well, no one saw anything, it was dark, so the show went on. Obviously Bret the Hitman Hart was like, the show shouldn't have stopped because my brother died, someone had died. I look at it like this. I don't know what I would do. Would I continue the show because like this? Would I continue the show? Would I stop the show? I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know. It's really hard to just try to figure that one out because, like, I don't think I'm ever going to be in that situation anyway. And if I was in that situation, I might continue the show. Like, I would just ask the audience. It's like the audience didn't know I might continue the show. But I'm, like, wondering something. Those people who were in the audience that day, and they found out the next day that someone died, were they like pissed off that they didn't know? Were they like, okay, I can understand? Were they happy? Obviously they were sad knowing that Owen Hart died, but it's like, how would you feel? And I'm just like, I'm trying to put myself in that situation where I'm just like, I go to, like, let's just say me and Tim, we went to WrestleMania 39, and Cody Rhodes is flying through the thing, and the lights go out, and Cody Rhodes is dead, and they continue the show anyway. Would we be mad or would we be happy about it? I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know the mixed emotions that could possibly be going through people's heads. Especially, I could imagine what the people in the front row were like. Because I'm pretty sure, like, people in the high seats probably wouldn't even notice. Sure. But what the heck were the people who were, like, around the ring? What the hell were they thinking? Like, what was going on in their heads? I'm wondering. Curious. I'm highly curious. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what I would do. But I can understand where Bret Hart's coming from. Because he lost his brother. They thought at the time that, they thought that Owen Hart was going to get punished because of what Bret Hart did by leaving. But it wasn't like really, why would he be punished? Because as far as everything was concerned, everybody was already cool with Bret Hart leaving. It was like, no, it wasn't like he was leaving like he was sneaking away. Everybody knew he was leaving. Even like Vince McMahon's like, I can't afford to pay him. You want to leave, cool. So he said, cool, I'm leaving, going over here for the paycheck. So it's like, why would he get punished for something that was like a deal? I guess you can say Vince McMahon is vindictive and could take it out on Owen. But for what reason, I don't know. Anyways, Bret Hart was at one point convinced that maybe Vince McMahon or WWE had Owen Hart killed for payback for what he did. Again, payback for what? I don't know. I was like, come on, really, Brett? Like, it's a bit much. So it's a bit much. At the end of the episode 4, Owen Hart's wife sued WWE for wrongful death and found out that the equipment that Owen Hart was wearing was defected, and so WWE ends up suing the company. So the wife settled with WWE, WWE settled with the company. Bret the Hitman Hart pretty much, I guess, said he forgave Vince McMahon on that situation because it was like, okay, it wasn't your fault. Which it wasn't. Which it was kind of like a stretch. A real big stretch there. But, yeah, and then it talks about a little bit more of the Attitude Era and everything else. And let me tell you about the Attitude Era. The Attitude Era was just, like I said, raunchy, violent as hell, sexual as hell, pretty much change the format ever. I mean, is there such a thing as going too far? Yes. And I think after a while, the Attitude Era and the WWE went too far at one point in time. Because I mean, there's a lot, and then there's just too fucking much. But it was fun. You know, it was fun. Would I want to do it again? Oh no, hell no. I know. No. As much fun as I had at the Attitude Era. Right now, this era, whatever this Paul Levesque era, that I'm enjoying it. It's enjoyable. It's like it's enough violence, enough sexuality, where it's not too much. It's not going down our fucking throats, like literally. But like it is not as bad. But like I said, the Attitude Era was fun for what it was, because it was just at the time where it was just the right time for that moment, and everything else, the violence, the sex, the everything. It was great. But yeah, that is episode 4, and oh no, it was a good show so far. It's a lot to unpack in episode 3 and 4, actually. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching or listening, whatever you're doing, and I will see you guys tomorrow for part 3, when we talk about episode 5 and 6. Okay, enjoy the rest of your Friday. Bye.